What up, moviegoers? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with my latest movie review. And I want to review Good Day to Die Hard, starring Bruce Willis. I just went to see the film, and I was entertained by the film, but I was actually disappointed with a lot of things in the film. So we'll get into it. The pros would be the action sequences, the chases, the shootouts, and the visual effects. Those were all awesome. They had some pretty epic stunts, like with the chase scenes, and shootouts are always great in action movies. Here are my gripes. One, I didn't feel like Bruce Willis was really playing vintage John McClane. If you watch the previous films, Bruce Willis he's basically known for being a smartass, wisecracking, like clever cop. And in this film, he didn't seem the same. He seemed a lot more reserved and passive. And like I said, I'm used to him being like such a smartass. Even in the first film, if you watch, there's a scene where the bad guys are in the office, and his wife, John McClane's wife, can see that they're visibly shaken up and pissed off and frustrated. And she tells her coworker that it must be because of Bruce Willis, because he's the only one that can get someone that angry. And in this one, he just seemed really passive, which is something I really didn't like. The other thing I didn't like would be the father and son on screen chemistry. I thought it was really flat. Bruce Willis he's the father, he's John McClane, and his son is named John McClane Jr. in the film. I don't feel they did a good job of justifying or really explaining why the son has so much hatred for him. They make an awkward attempt to explain that scenario, because the son throughout the movie is pretty rude and always saying smart comments about Bruce Willis not being there. At one point in the movie, they make an attempt to try to explain that side of it, and the best they do is a brief like monologue from Bruce Willis, basically saying he put work first. He was a workaholic, being a cop, and he spent a lot of time away from his family. But if you watch the movie, it just doesn't seem justified. Like, the son acts like Bruce Willis is the dad from Radio Fly or something, as if he abused him or raped him or something. He just seems like he's that mad at his dad. And I don't feel like they really explained or did a good job of explaining that level of emotional disconnect with the father and son. Throughout the movie, the son's he's calling him John instead of calling him dad. He says dad maybe once or twice in the film, but every other time he wants to get his attention, he says John, John, damn it, John. And he's saying John throughout the film. So I thought that was kind of weird. And here's an example. If you ever seen the movie Warrior with Tom Hardy and Nick Nolte, I think they do a much better job, story-wise, plot-wise, of explaining that love-hate father relationship between Tom Hardy and Nick Nolte's character. And they depict Nick Nolte as a drunk throughout the whole movie. They give better references, and they expand on it more. So when you see Tom Hardy is acting so cold-hearted and calculus and cold-hearted and callous against Nick Nolte, it seems a lot more justified in this than in this film. There's a scene where even Bruce Willis flies to Russia to check up on his son. He's supposedly on vacation, and he first encounters his son during an action sequence, and his son pulls a gun out on him for getting in the way, or like preventing him from doing his job, or taking this hostage away. It's just kind of weird. So again, the father and son relationship, I thought that was pretty flat, and it didn't really connect. And if you watch the other Die Hard films, a lot of them had some level of a partner. In the first one, they had Carl Winslow from Family Matters. He was pretty much Bruce Willis's partner, keeping him in communication through walkie-talkies or whatever. You had Justin Long in the fourth one, and then you had Samuel Jackson in the third one. So there's other Die Hard films where they have the whole John McClane with some level of a partner throughout the film, and this one I think was the flattest. Like, Samuel Jackson and Bruce Willis had better chemistry. Justin Long and Bruce Willis had better chemistry, and Carl Winslow and Bruce Willis, to me, had better chemistry than his partner in this, which would be his son. Other thing I didn't like is they didn't really have a clear and concise bad guy. If you watch the other films, part one had Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman. Part two had William Sadler, who was blowing up the planes. Third one, you had Jeremy Irons, who played an excellent bad guy as well. And then you had the Tim, I forgot his name, but he played in the the game that they turned into movie, Hitman. Yeah, so you had those, and they were clear and concise bad guys. But in this one, the bad guys not really. I don't want to give too much spoilers. You have to watch the film, but they didn't really have a clear and concise bad guy, in my opinion, which is something else I didn't like. My favorite films of the Die Hard series are Part One and Part Three, and most of the things that I didn't like about this film, they actually did excellent jobs of doing. Like, they didn't have a clear and concise bad guy in this film, but in Part One and Three, they did have that. John McClane seemed like John McClane in both of those films, just how he was acting. So basically, the gripes that I have with this film, I think the best examples of them are in Part One and Three. Other than that, just some of the action sequences were a little bit unrealistic, and I know it's an action movie, so you tend to get that, but I don't know. I'm not really. I guess I've been spoiled. We're not really used to in the Die Hard series. It was always a clever balance of comedy, action sequences, drama, a little bit of love story with his wife, and chemistry between Bruce Willis and a partner. So I'm not used to seeing a Die Hard film that relies so much on just visual effects, stunts, and mindless action. I'm used to having a good plot involved too. When you see the end of this film and you see the plot and basically what was unfolding as the plot unfolds, you're just like, oh, that's it. Whereas some of the other ones, it clicks better, just the whole plot. The action sequences, again, were a little bit unrealistic. There's a couple parts, there's more than one occasion they jump out of windows aimlessly, like they're running, being chased or shot at or whatever, and then they just run full speed, jump out of a window without knowing anything. They don't even know what's beneath them. They just run and jump out, and conveniently they land on some kind of scaffolding and slide down a slide, and they fall in the pool in another scene. So I just thought that was pretty unrealistic. Even like if you watch the first Die Hard film, there's a scene where he's on the skyscraper, he's on the roof, and he ties the fire hose to his waist, and then he runs and jumps off of it as it blows up, and he shoots the window and swings in. So you could say that's unrealistic too, but it was a little bit more realistic. At least he looked over the ledge and tried to make an attempt, as opposed to running out of a window, a skyscraper, and just jumping without any kind of rope or harness or bungee. So there's a couple scenes like that as far as the action sequences are concerned. That was a little bit unrealistic. So that's my basic critiques. This film to me is like Rocky 5 out of the Rocky series. It's decent, but it just doesn't have the same flow. Some of the things that you liked about the previous films, this film is missing. And it's funny because Rocky 5 and Die Hard 5, so I feel it's kind of the same. You watch the first 4 Rockies and you can dig it. You're like, oh, Clubber Lang, the Apollo Creed, you have Ivan Drago, and then you had the one with Tommy Morrison. It just felt different. And I feel like that's the same with this particular Die Hard. I also feel that this film, aside from the plot and the unrealistic action sequences and whatnot, I just feel like the plot, they didn't really go into depth, and it just seemed different. It felt like this film doesn't even really fit in the Die Hard series. It could have been just a vehicle with Bruce Willis and had completely different character names and just made an action movie out of it. It doesn't really fit to me like some of the other ones, and partly because of Bruce Willis not really seeming like John McClane. There's a couple times where he has humor, and basically his character is the only one that really had much charisma to me, but it still didn't feel like John McClane. In fact, I feel like Bruce Willis, when he played in The Last Boy Scout with Damon Wayans, I felt he seemed more like John McClane in that movie than he did in this one, because he was talking shit to the bad guys. And he just seemed like more John McClane in The Last Boy Scout than he did in this film. So that's one thing I really didn't like. Again, this film's entertaining for its action sequences, but it's definitely lacking chemistry, plot, and I guess I've been a little spoiled with the previous films because they usually have had those things, chemistry with the partner, plot, and that kind of thing. So for that reason, I give this film a B-. It's not a horrible film, but it really doesn't fit the Die Hard series. I'm an action junkie, so I tend to like action movies, but feel it's a little bit flat in some areas. And again, I feel it could have been its own film, its own entity, as opposed to even being part of the Die Hard franchise. I think this was kind of a way for them to make easier money by just attaching it to the franchise name, but it doesn't really fit the criteria of the other films. So give it a B minus. That's my thoughts. Leave a comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys thought of the movie. What was your favorite Die Hard? And until next movie review,